The old farmhouse stood alone at the end of a gravel road in rural Iowa. Surrounded by endless cornfields and ancient oak trees, it looked like something from another era. The white paint had faded to a dull gray, and the wooden porch sagged under the weight of time. 17-year-old Ethan Carter stared at the house from the passenger seat of his father's truck. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. His father laughed. "It's not that bad. It looks haunted. It looks old. There's a difference?" His father shook his head and parked near the porch. After his parents' divorce, Ethan and his father had moved from Chicago to this small farming town to start over. Ethan hated everything about it already. No friends, no city, no internet worth mentioning, and now an old farmhouse that looked like it belonged in a horror movie. As they carried boxes inside, Ethan noticed something strange. The house felt frozen in time. Old photographs lined the walls. Dust-covered furniture sat exactly where someone had left it. A grandfather clock stood silent in the hallway. The previous owner, Mr. Harold Whitmore, had died 6 months earlier at the age of 93. Since he had no close relatives, the property had eventually been sold. That first night, Ethan lay awake listening to unfamiliar sounds. Wind rattled the windows. Branches scraped against the roof. The house creaked constantly. Around midnight, he finally began drifting to sleep. Then he heard it. A thump. He opened his eyes. Another thump, slow, heavy, coming from below. Ethan sat up. The sound came again. Thump, thump, thump. His heart began racing. The noise seemed to come from underneath the floor, from the basement. He grabbed his phone flashlight and quietly stepped into the hallway. The sound stopped immediately. The silence felt even worse. The next morning, Ethan mentioned it during breakfast. His father barely looked up from his coffee. Old houses make noises. This wasn't the house. What was it then? I don't know. His father shrugged. Probably pipes. But Ethan wasn't convinced. Later that afternoon, he explored every room in the farmhouse. Eventually, he found a narrow hallway near the kitchen. At the end stood a heavy wooden door. Unlike every other door in the house, this one had a thick metal chain wrapped around it. A rusty padlock secured the chain. The basement. Ethan frowned. Why lock a basement? He tried pulling on the chain. Nothing. The door wouldn't budge. On the wood, someone had carved a message years ago. "Do not open." His stomach tightened. Someone had carved those words deeply into the wood. Not written, not painted, carved. As if they desperately wanted nobody to forget. That night the sounds returned. Thump, thump, thump. This time they lasted nearly 5 minutes. Ethan couldn't sleep. The following day he visited the town library. The librarian, Mrs. Holloway, recognized the farmhouse immediately. "The Whitmore place?" "Yeah." Her smile faded. "Interesting house." "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "People used to tell stories." "What stories?" She lowered her voice. "Mr. Whitmore had a younger brother named Samuel." Ethan leaned forward. "What happened to him?" "No one knows." "He disappeared?" Mrs. Holloway nodded. "In 1978. In 1978. The room suddenly felt colder. "Was he ever found?" "No." "Did the police investigate?" "For years." "What did they discover?" "Nothing." Ethan's pulse quickened. That evening he searched the attic. Buried beneath old blankets and dusty boxes, he discovered a wooden chest. Inside lay dozens of journals. All belonged to Harold Whitmore. The entries stretched across nearly 40 years. Ethan began reading. At first the jeweler. That night he waited until his father fell asleep. Then he grabbed a hammer from the garage. The basement door stood at the end of the hallway. silent, waiting. He struck the padlock, once, twice, 3 times. The rusty metal snapped, the chain fell. Ethan slowly opened the door. The smell hit him immediately. Dust, mold, something older. The staircase disappeared into darkness. He switched on his flashlight. Step by step he descended. The basement was enormous. Stone walls surrounded him. Shelves lined the room. Old tools hung from hooks. Nothing unusual. Then he noticed something strange. One wall looked newer than the others. The bricks were a different color, as if someone had rebuilt part of it. His heartbeat thundered. He approached carefully. The mortar appeared decades newer than everything else. Someone had sealed something behind that wall. He found a sledgehammer nearby. For several minutes he stared at the bricks. Then he swung. Crack. Dust exploded. Again. Crack. Again. A hole appeared. Cold air rushed out. Ethan froze. There was empty space behind the wall. Not earth, not stone, a hidden room. His hands shook as he widened the opening. Eventually he squeezed through. The flashlight beam swept across a small chamber, a wooden chair, a lantern, a desk, and dozens of photographs. Every photograph showed Samuel Whitmore. Some were pinned to the wall, others scattered across the floor. In the corner sat a metal box. Ethan opened it. Inside were letters, newspapers, and a diary. Samuel's diary. He opened the first page. If anyone finds this, I am still here. Ethan stopped breathing. Still here? The diary revealed a terrifying story. Samuel had discovered evidence that Harold had been stealing money from neighboring farms through fraudulent land deals. When Samuel threatened to expose him, the brothers fought. Harold locked Samuel inside the hidden room temporarily while they cooled down. But before releasing him, Harold suffered a severe fall while working outside. The injury left him unconscious for days. By the time he recovered, Samuel had vanished. At least that's what Harold told everyone. But Samuel's diary told a different story. He never escaped. For weeks he remained trapped inside the hidden room, writing, waiting, hoping. Eventually his entries became weaker, then they stopped. Ethan felt sick. He looked around. Near the far wall lay human remains, hidden for nearly 50 years. The next morning, police surrounded the farmhouse. Forensic investigators worked for hours. The entire town watched. News spread quickly. The mystery of Samuel Whitmore had finally been solved. Days later, investigators made an even bigger discovery. Harold had returned to the hidden room many years after Samuel's death. Overwhelmed by guilt, he preserved every photograph, diary, and letter. He had never confessed. But he never removed the evidence either. It was as though part of him wanted someone to find the truth someday. A week later, Ethan stood outside the farmhouse watching the sunset. For decades, the town had believed Samuel simply disappeared. Now his family finally knew what happened. The mystery was over. As Ethan turned to go inside, workers carried the last evidence boxes from the basement. One investigator paused beside him. "You solved a 50-year-old cold case." Ethan smiled weakly. "Not exactly." "What do you mean?"